Citizens of Super Earth, democracy needs you. The good word of liberty lives in the barrel of a gun, and only you can deliver it. Enlist today and live the glory of spreading democracy, fighting alongside your brothers, and dying in the far reaches of the galaxy in the name of hollow ideals and false Helldivers 2 is fun. Combat is thrilling, frantic, and tense, movement is fluid, and the progression loop is simple but addictive. On paper, it is a solid live service game that is good fun with friends. In practice, the thing that truly sets Helldivers 2 apart from other similar games is a commitment to atmosphere and tone. Across the entire game, everything works in unison towards this end. It has the kind of cohesive world building that is usually reserved for single-player games. The ship could have just been a series of menus, but it's an explorable lobby, and mind you, it's not big, it's realistic. Mission selection has a tactile feeling to it, and this short cutscene that plays when you enter the Hellpod is entirely unnecessary, and most games of this ilk would scrap something like this to get you back in the action faster. But Helldivers 2 is intentional about what it shows you, and it doesn't feel sluggish or inconvenient. It's just exciting. Your downtime on the ship is well contrasted with the hellish battlefield, but it still feels grand and epic in and of itself. This little cutscene is punchy, and this footlock design is so cool to me for whatever reason. It seems inconsequential, yet it does so much to contribute to the atmosphere the game wants to establish. You are meant to feel cool, to feel like a hero, and the theme that plays as you rocket towards the surface of a planet is cinematic and inspiring, rallying you to the cause. The other half of the game's atmosphere is absurd comedy. The opening cutscene is a whimsically self-aware military propaganda spoof, and this is the lens through which you should interpret the rest of the game. There are a ton of silly voice lines,
Sweet liberty! No!
and you'll probably find yourself laughing a lot while playing with friends.
Don't you love playing video games with your friend?
And the experience itself is fun and generally lighthearted, yet it is still wholly epic. It's an incredible satire of military propaganda films because it blows up the perception of war as badass to a ridiculous degree that feels in line with the over-the-top ethos of your military superiors who are ordering you to shoot anything that tries to be diplomatic. The devs have pinpointed the absurdism of war and cranked it to 11. The game is careful about what it portrays, however. The bugs and automatons are not human. This game isn't trying to make you feel awful about your role in the war, which might happen if all of this liberty-bringing and democracy-spreading came at the cost of sentient human life. But it also serves to represent the dehumanization of the enemy in war, the way that any possibility of empathy for soldiers on the other side of the battlefield is beaten out of you. The war is horrific, but it doesn't weigh down the satire because, as a player, you kind of need to buy into the war, to buy into the cause. And this is where the community comes in. By framing the game in the lens of something like Top Gun, making every player feel like a hero, and by bombarding them left and right with in-game propaganda, the atmosphere of the game puts all the players into the same mindset. One of my good friends has been urging me to play this game since it came out, and he would not stop talking about liberty and democracy, and I don't know, I just didn't get it. But then he bought me the game. Love you, Tom. And in my first match, I was also shouting the good word of freedom as I nuked hordes of insects. It takes no time at all to buy into this world, into the cause, and so by having something to fight for, my squad and I immediately became something greater than the sum of our parts. And that's not how we behave in Fortnite or Valorant, where our only goal is victory for the sake of victory. On top of the match-to-match unity created by Atmosphere, the Warfront is absolute genius. It feels like something born out of the same design philosophy as something like Journey or Death Stranding, where you're connected to players all over the world without ever really getting to interact with them. As the entire player base makes progress towards the war effort, progress that you can see and track, the players become united. Tianquan was a brilliant example of this, because as soon as we liberated it, we could start using mechs. So the entire player base was working towards this same goal, and you as a player will never see most of those people, but you're rallied by the knowledge that all over the world there are players just like you fighting for the same thing. I also think it's super cool to contextualize updates with something like that, as opposed to just adding new content, just cause. I've never really had any interest in military. I'm not terribly interested in war films or anything, but after running out of reinforcements and having a marathon to run to the last objective, I started to get it. My partner fell in battle. Time was running out, but he was carrying all of our samples and we had a good haul. But we also still had the objective. 2 choices lie before me. Run and complete the mission, or turn back, grab the samples, and then hope you have enough time to do the mission, all on your last reinforcement. With the bloodlust of an Achilles robbed of his Patroclus, I stormed into enemy lines, weaving through enemy fire, diving under hordes of bullets, grabbing our samples, and making the escape. I put distance between me and the enemy and began my sprint towards the last objective. After defying the odds, my journey was still far from over. Eventually, I was able to revive my partner, and we destroyed the bots and made our objective, and just barely made our extraction. I've never seen Saving Private Ryan, but any given mission in Helldivers 2 is about what I imagine that movie is like. The game loves to corner you and drop you into situations that seem hopeless, but then a single act of bravery and heroism can turn the tide and lead your squad to safety. And all of that atmosphere only serves to enhance this feeling. And on top of that, the presentation is first class. The camera work is immersive, dynamic, and it really enhances the explosions and the gun flashes around you, which are so bright. It can almost be disorienting sometimes, and while it might be an accessibility issue, I love it. Now, this kind of feels like it conflicts with the satire, right? As a player, I feel good about my part in the war. I feel good about war, even. Ravaging planets with hell bombs just to genocide these bugs is pretty cool, right? Well, yeah, it is. But if you're like me, you've hit this point of self-reflection. Why do I feel good about this? Fuck, the in-game propaganda worked. I am mindlessly propagating the fiery wrath of freedom, devastating ecosystems in the name of some faceless democracy. I'm squashing out any threat or competition to Super Earth just because I feel badass when I do it. But this is also ridiculous. I mean, why are we actually doing any of this? Do we really understand what it is we're fighting for? Or are we just following the orders of our superiors because it makes us feel cool? So it must be right. There is truly little else as satisfying as pulling your squad back from the brink of defeat or diving onto the evac at the last second. For my first mission, I fully understood the magic of Helldivers 2. I could feel the passion from the team, and on top of a mechanically excellent game, I was enraptured by the atmosphere that the entire game is soaked in. It perfectly captures the feeling of a war film and uses it to excellent effect as a satirical critique on the way military propaganda takes advantage of people by using ideals and honor to mask the ugly truth of war, and the toll it takes on people who do not deserve it, especially the soldier. An expendable resource manipulated like clay in the hands of cowards directing the war safely from their control centers. While it is an excellently crafted game with a perfectly tuned loop, it is this narrative and artistic richness that truly sets Helldivers apart and forms a community that is unlike anything I've really seen before.
Extra democracy. Fuck yeah, good job.
Fuck yeah, extra democracy.